An arrogant CEO makes a ruthless bet, win over and marry a McDonald's waitress in just 3 months. But what starts as a game turns into something no one could have predicted. Money, power, love, and redemption collide in this gripping story. How far would someone go to prove they've changed? And what happens when the past comes back to haunt the present? Get ready for a journey that will challenge your expectations and touch your heart. This isn't just a love story, it's a saga of transformation that will surprise you at every turn. The gleaming skyscrapers of San Francisco's financial district towered over the bustling streets below, casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. On the top floor of one of these glass and steel monoliths, Justin Harrison stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, his piercing blue eyes surveying the city like a king overlooking his domain. At 35, Justin was the youngest CEO in the history of Nexus Technologies, a company he had steered to become one of the most valuable tech giants in the world. Justin's reflection stared back at him from the polished window, impeccably tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and a tie that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His chiseled features and perfectly coiffed dark hair completed the image of success and power. He smirked, admiring his own reflection. Life had always been a game to Justin, and he was undoubtedly winning. A soft knock on the door interrupted his reverie. "Mr. Harrison, your 4 o'clock is here," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Send them in," Justin replied, not bothering to turn around. He heard the door open and close, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching. "Justin, my man!" The booming voice belonged to Caleb Thornton, Justin's longtime friend and fellow tech mogul. "Ready to head out? The guys are waiting downstairs." Justin finally turned, greeting Caleb with a grin. "Let's not keep them waiting then. God knows their fragile egos can't handle it." The two men shared a laugh as they made their way to the private elevator. As they descended, Caleb filled Justin in on their plans for the evening. Drinks at an exclusive rooftop bar, followed by dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Just another Thursday night in the life of San Francisco's elite. As they exited the building, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb. The chauffeur quickly stepped out to open the door for them. Justin slid into the plush leather interior, followed by Caleb and 2 other men, Ryan Cooper, a venture capitalist with a reputation for being a shark, and Derek Winters, a rising star in the world of artificial intelligence. The conversation in the car flowed freely, a mix of industry gossip, boasts about recent conquests, both in the boardroom and the bedroom, and playful jabs at each other's egos. Justin was in his element, his quick wit and sharp tongue keeping him at the center of attention. As they cruised through the city, Ryan suddenly leaned forward, tapping on the partition. "Hey, pull over at that McDonald's up ahead. I'm craving some fries." Justin raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? We're heading to Atelier Cren and you want McDonald's?" Ryan shrugged. "What can I say? I'm a man of refined tastes." The group erupted in laughter as the Rolls-Royce came to a stop in front of the Golden Arches. They piled out of the car, drawing curious glances from passers-by. It wasn't every day you saw 4 men in tailored suits, worth more than most cars, strolling into a McDonald's. As they entered, the smell of grease and salt hit them. Justin wrinkled his nose in distaste, but followed his friends to the counter. While Ryan placed their order, Justin's gaze wandered around the restaurant, taking in the worn tables, the harried-looking staff, and the diverse mix of customers. That's when he saw her. She was behind the counter, a few registers down from where Ryan was ordering. Her golden brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, wisps escaping to frame a heart-shaped face. Even in the unflattering McDonald's uniform, there was something about her that caught Justin's attention. Maybe it was the determined set of her jaw as she dealt with a difficult customer, or the flash of warmth in her hazel eyes when she smiled at a child. "Earth to Justin," Caleb's voice broke through his thoughts. "See something you like." Justin blinked, realizing he had been staring. He turned back to his friends, who were all looking at him with varying degrees of amusement. "Just wondering how people can eat this stuff," Justin deflected, gesturing vaguely at the menu. Caleb wasn't buying it. His eyes flickered to the woman Justin had been watching, then back to Justin. A mischievous grin spread across his face. "You know, Jay," Caleb said, his tone casual but his eyes glinting with challenge, "for all your talk about being able to get any woman you want, I bet you couldn't land someone like her." He nodded towards the woman behind the counter. Justin scoffed. Please, I could have her eating out of the palm of my hand in no time. Care to put your money where your mouth is? Ryan chimed in, catching on to Caleb's game. Justin's competitive streak flared. What did you have in mind? Caleb leaned in, lowering his voice. 2 million says you can't get her to marry you within, let's say, 6 months. For a moment, Justin was stunned into silence. Then he laughed. You can't be serious. Dead serious, Caleb replied. Unless you're not up for the challenge. Justin's eyes narrowed. He knew he was being baited, but he couldn't resist. His gaze flickered back to the woman. She was nothing like the supermodels and socialites he usually dated. She was ordinary, but that's what would make his victory all the sweeter. You're on, Justin said, his voice low and confident. But let's make it interesting. 3 million, and I'll do it in 3 months. The other men exchanged glances, then nodded. Deal, Caleb said, extending his hand. Justin shook it, sealing the bet. As his friends moved to find a table, Justin approached the counter where the woman was working. He glanced at her name tag, Susan. Excuse me, he said, flashing his most charming smile. I couldn't help but notice you seem to be having a rough day. I was wondering if I could buy you a coffee after your shift. Susan looked up, surprise flickering across her face. She took in Justin's expensive suit and confident demeanor, and her expression shifted to one of wary amusement. Thanks, but I don't think so, she replied, her tone polite but firm. Justin blinked, caught off guard by the rejection. He wasn't used to women saying no to him. Are you sure? It's just coffee. I promise I don't bite. Susan's lips twitched in a small smile. I appreciate the offer, but I have to pick up my daughter from daycare after my shift. Maybe another time. Before Justin could respond, she was called away to help another customer. He stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. A daughter. That explained the look of exhaustion behind her eyes, the slight slump in her shoulders. As Justin made his way back to his friends, his mind was racing. This wasn't going to be as easy as he thought, but that only made him more determined. He always did love a challenge. Over the next few weeks, Justin found himself returning to that McDonald's more times than he cared to admit. Each time he tried a different approach with Susan. He complimented her efficiency, asked about her day, even tried to engage her in conversation about current events. But while she remained polite, she kept her responses brief and professional. It was maddening and fascinating. The more Susan resisted his charm, the more intrigued Justin became. He found himself genuinely curious about her life, her struggles, her dreams. He learned that her daughter's name was Chloe, that she was 5 years old and loved drawing. He discovered that Susan was taking online classes in her spare time, working towards a degree in social work. One evening, as Susan was finishing up her shift, Justin decided to try a different tactic. As she emerged from the employee entrance, he was there, leaning against his car. Before you say no, he said quickly, seeing the refusal forming on her lips, hear me out. I'm not asking you on a date. I'd like to talk. Really talk. No ulterior motives, I promise. Susan hesitated, studying him with those perceptive hazel eyes. For a long moment, Justin thought she was going to refuse again. Then, to his surprise, she nodded. All right, she said, but not tonight. I have to get Chloe from my neighbors. Tomorrow, during my lunch break. There's a park across the street. Meet me there at noon. Justin felt a surge of triumph. I'll be there, he promised. As Susan walked away, Justin couldn't help but feel a twinge of something unfamiliar. It wasn't just the thrill of the chase, the anticipation of winning the bet. There was something else, something he couldn't quite name. Little did he know, this simple agreement to meet for lunch was about to set in motion a series of events that would change his life forever. The game he thought he was playing was about to become all too real, and the stakes were far higher than any amount of money. As Justin drove home that night, the city lights blurring past his window, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow's lunch with an eagerness that surprised him. For the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of something genuine, something that went beyond the shallow pursuits that had defined his life for so long. The bet that had started as a game was about to become the catalyst for a profound journey of self-discovery, love, and redemption. And as the sun set over San Francisco, casting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the stage was set for a story that would challenge everything Justin thought he knew about himself and the world around him. The next day, as the clock struck noon, Justin found himself sitting on a bench in the small park across from the McDonald's, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. He was used to power lunches in upscale restaurants, not brown bagging it in a public park. Yet here he was, waiting for a woman who had occupied his thoughts far more than he cared to admit. Susan arrived a few minutes later, her McDonald's uniform partially hidden under a worn denim jacket. She sat down next to Justin, pulling out a simple sandwich from her bag. "So," she said, unwrapping her lunch, "you wanted to talk." Talk. Justin found himself at a loss for words, a rare occurrence for him. He was struck by how different Susan looked outside of work, more relaxed yet still guarded. "I guess I just wanted to know more about you," he said finally. "Your life, your dreams, what brings you joy?" Susan raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "That's quite a shift from asking me out for coffee every other day." Justin had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I know, and I apologize if I came on too strong. I find you intriguing." "Intriguing?" Susan laughed softly. "I'm a single mom working at McDonald's. Not exactly a mystery novel. But that's just it," Justin pressed. "Your life is so different from mine. I want to understand it." Susan studied him for a moment, then sighed. "All right, what do you want to know?" Over the next hour, Justin listened as Susan shared snippets of her life. She told him about growing up in a small town in Ohio, dreaming of becoming a social worker, about meeting Chloe's father in college, falling in love, and then watching that love crumble under the weight of responsibility when she got pregnant. She spoke of the struggle to make ends meet, of working multiple jobs while trying to be there for her daughter. "It's not easy," Susan admitted, her eyes distant. "There are days when I'm so tired I can barely think straight. But then Chloe will do something, draw a picture, learn a new word, and it's all worth it. She's my whole world." Justin found himself captivated. The raw honesty in Susan's words, the quiet strength in her voice. It was unlike anything he had encountered in his world of corporate machinations and superficial relationships. As their lunch break came to an end, Justin felt a strange reluctance to let Susan go. "Can we do this again?" he asked. Susan hesitated, then nodded. "Same time next week," she said, before heading back to work. Over the next few weeks, their lunch meetings became a regular occurrence. Justin found himself looking forward to these simple conversations more than any board meeting or high-stakes negotiation. He learned about the intricacies of Susan's life, the constant juggling act of work, childcare, and study, the small victories and daily challenges. One day, as they sat on their usual bench, Susan turned to Justin with a curious expression. "You know, we've spent all this time talking about my life. What about yours? What's it like being a hotshot CEO?" Justin chuckled, but there was a hint of discomfort in his laugh. For the first time, he found himself seeing his life through Susan's eyes, and he wasn't sure he liked what he saw. "It's complicated," he said finally. "There's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations. Sometimes it feels like I'm just playing a role, you know?" Susan nodded, her eyes understanding. "We all play roles sometimes. The trick is not to lose yourself in them." Her words stuck with Justin long after their lunch ended. As he sat in his plush office later that day, he found himself questioning aspects of his life he had always taken for granted. Meanwhile, in Justin's absence, his friends were growing curious about his frequent disappearances during lunch. "Maybe he's actually serious about this bet," Ryan mused one evening as they gathered for drinks at their usual high-end bar. Caleb shook his head, sipping his expensive scotch. "Nah, this is Justin we're talking about. He's probably just enjoying the chase. Once he wins, he'll be back to his old self." Derek, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "I don't know, guys. I saw him the other day coming back from one of these lunch meetings. He looked different, happy, but in a way I've never seen before." The others exchanged glances, a hint of concern in their eyes. They had started this bet as a joke, a way to push Justin's buttons. None of them had expected it to affect him like this. Back at McDonald's, Susan's co-workers had also noticed a change in her. Maria, a fellow waitress and Susan's closest friend at work, cornered her in the break room one day. "All right, spill," Maria demanded, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Who's the guy in the fancy suit who keeps coming to see you?" Susan felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "It's not like that," she protested. "We're just talking." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Uh-huh, and I'm the Queen of England." "Come on, Sus, I haven't seen you smile like this in years. There's something there." Susan couldn't deny the truth in Maria's words. Her meetings with Justin had become the bright spot in her otherwise grueling weeks. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, to the way he listened to her with genuine interest, to the rare moments when he let his guard down and showed her glimpses of the man behind the CEO facade. But she was also scared. Justin's world was so far removed from hers. How could someone like him ever truly understand her life, her struggles? As the weeks turned into months, Justin found himself more and more drawn to Susan and her world. He started volunteering at a local community center, inspired by Susan's dream of becoming a social worker. He even spent an afternoon with Susan and Chloe at a local park, pushing the little girl on the swings and feeling a warmth in his chest that he couldn't quite explain. It was during one of these afternoons that Justin made a decision that would change everything. As he watched Susan laughing with Chloe, her face lit up with joy, he knew he couldn't keep playing this game. The next day, instead of meeting Susan at their usual spot, Justin asked her to meet him after her shift. When she arrived, she found him pacing nervously. "Justin, is everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Justin took a deep breath, then turned to face her. "Susan, I need to tell you something. When I first approached you, it wasn't entirely genuine." He saw the confusion and hurt flash across her face, and he hurried to continue. "But these past few months getting to know you, Chloe, it's changed me. You've changed me." Before Susan could respond, Justin dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "I know this is sudden and probably crazy, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Susan Hughes, will you marry me?" Susan stared at him in shock, her mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. It was too fast, too unreal. "Justin, I don't know what to say. We barely know each other." Justin stood, taking her hands in his. "I know it seems fast, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. You and Chloe, you've shown me what really matters in life. I want to be a part of that. I want to give you both the life you deserve." Susan pulled her hands away, shaking her head. "Justin, I can't. I need time to think. This is too much." She turned and walked away, leaving Justin standing there, the ring box still in his hand. As she made her way home, Susan's mind was in turmoil. Part of her was thrilled at the idea of a life with Justin, financial security for Chloe, a partner to share her burdens, but another part was terrified. How could she trust this whirlwind romance? How could she be sure Justin truly understood what he was getting into? Over the next few days, Susan agonized over her decision. She thought about Chloe, about the opportunities this marriage could provide for her daughter. She thought about her own dreams, her desire to finish her degree and become a social worker. Could a life with Justin make those dreams more attainable? She also thought about love. Did she love Justin? The answer, she realized with a start, was yes. Somewhere between their lunch conversations and park outings, she had fallen for him. But was love enough? Finally, after a week of sleepless nights and endless deliberation, Susan made her decision. She asked Justin to meet her at their bench in the park. When he arrived, his face etched with hope and fear, Susan took a deep breath. "Yes," she said simply. Justin's eyes widened. "Yes, you mean—" Susan nodded, a small smile on her face. "Yes, I'll marry you. But Justin, you have to understand what you're getting into. My life, it's not glamorous. It's messy and complicated and—" Justin cut her off with a kiss, pouring all his emotions into it. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I know exactly what I'm getting into," he said softly, "and I've never wanted anything more." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Justin insisted on a quick wedding, eager to start their new life together. Susan, still somewhat in shock, went along with his plans. The contrast between their worlds became even more apparent as they prepared for the wedding. Justin wanted to fly in a famous designer for Susan's dress, while she was content with a simple gown off the rack. He suggested a lavish ceremony at a vineyard in Napa Valley, while she preferred a small gathering in the local park, where they had spent so many afternoons. In the end, they compromised. The wedding would be small and intimate, but held at a beautiful botanical garden. Susan's dress was designer, but understated and elegant. Chloe would be the flower girl, a role she took very seriously. As the big day approached, both Justin and Susan faced questions and doubts from those around them. Justin's friends couldn't understand his rush to marry a nobody, a term that made Justin's blood boil when he overheard it. Susan's co-workers and family worried she was being swept off her feet by a rich man's promises. But despite the doubts and challenges, Justin and Susan stood firm in their decision. On a warm Saturday in June, they exchanged vows in front of a small gathering of family and friends. Chloe, beaming with pride, scattered rose petals down the aisle before Susan made her entrance. As Justin saw Susan walking towards him, radiant in her simple white gown, he felt a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. This woman, with her quiet strength and boundless love, had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. Susan, for her part, couldn't take her eyes off Justin. Gone was the arrogant CEO she had first met. In his place stood a man who had opened his heart to her and Chloe, who had shown her a kind of love she had never thought possible. Their vows were simple, but heartfelt. Justin promised to always support Susan's dreams, to be a father to Chloe, and to never take their love for granted. Susan vowed to stand by Justin through all of life's challenges, to help him stay grounded, and to love him unconditionally. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheers erupted from their small audience. Chloe ran up to them, and Justin scooped her up in his arms, including her in their embrace. For a moment, the three of them stood there, a new family united. The reception that followed was a joyous affair, a perfect blend of Justin's refined tastes and Susan's down-to-earth sensibilities. There was gourmet food alongside comfort dishes, champagne flowing freely, but also kid-friendly mocktails for Chloe and her little friends. As the evening wore on, Justin found a quiet moment to slip away with his new wife. They stood on a small balcony overlooking the gardens, the sounds of the party drifting up to them. "Are you happy?" Justin asked, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. Susan leaned into him, a soft smile on her face. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, neither of them could have predicted the challenges that lay ahead. They were from different worlds, with different experiences and expectations. Their love would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. But in that moment, as the stars twinkled above and the promise of a new life stretched out before them, Justin and Susan were filled with hope. They had taken a leap of faith, choosing love over caution, dreams over practicality. The shimmering San Francisco skyline loomed before Susan as she stood on the balcony of Justin's penthouse apartment, her new home. The vastness of the city below her was both exhilarating and terrifying. It had been 2 weeks since the wedding, and Susan still felt like she was living in a dream, or perhaps a movie set. "Mommy, look!" Chloe's excited voice broke through Susan's reverie. The 5-year-old was pressing her face against the glass barrier, her eyes wide with wonder. "The cars look like ants." Susan smiled, running her hand through her daughter's hair. "They do, don't they? It's quite a view, isn't it?" "It's awesome," Chloe exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. "Can we live here forever?" The question made Susan's heart clench. Forever was a long time, and despite the whirlwind romance and fairy tale wedding, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was an imposter in this world of wealth and luxury. "We'll see, sweetie," Susan replied, trying to keep her voice light. "Now, why don't we go inside and unpack some more of your toys?" As they turned to go back inside, Susan's gaze fell on the spacious living room. Sleek leather couches, abstract art pieces worth more than her yearly salary at McDonald's, and a state-of-the-art entertainment system that she was afraid to touch. It was all so different from the cozy, if cramped, apartment they had left behind. Justin emerged from his home office, his face lighting up at the sight of them. "There are my 2 favorite girls," he said, wrapping an arm around Susan's waist and ruffling Chloe's hair. "How are you settling in?" "It's overwhelming," Susan admitted, leaning into his embrace. "But we're getting there, right, Chloe?" Chloe nodded enthusiastically. "Daddy Justin, can we get a puppy? There's so much space here." Justin laughed, a sound that still made Susan's heart skip a beat. "We'll talk about it, princess. For now, why don't you go check out the surprise I left in your room?" As Chloe scampered off, Justin turned to Susan, concern etched on his face. "You okay, love? I know this is a big change." Susan forced a smile. "I'm fine, really. It's just a lot to take in. I keep feeling like someone's going to realize I don't belong here and kick me out." Justin pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You belong here because I love you, and you love me. That's all that matters." But as the days turned into weeks, Susan found that love wasn't always enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. She struggled with the simplest things, like operating the high-tech coffee maker that seemed to have more buttons than a spaceship, or knowing which fork to use at the fancy restaurants Justin took them to. One evening, about a month after the wedding, Justin came home to find Susan sitting on the floor of their walk-in closet, surrounded by designer dresses and shoes, tears streaming down her face. "Susan?" Justin rushed to her side, alarmed. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" She looked up at him, her eyes red and puffy. "I can't do this, Justin. I don't know how to be this person, this rich man's wife who wears $1,000 dresses and goes to charity galas. I tried on every single one of these dresses, and I still feel like a fraud." Justin sat down beside her, pulling her into his arms. "Oh, sweetheart, you don't have to be anyone but yourself. I fell in love with you. Not some idea of a rich man's wife. But your friends, your colleagues, they all look at me like I don't belong, and maybe they're right," Susan said, her voice barely above a whisper. Justin felt a pang of guilt. He had noticed the sideways glances, the whispered comments when they thought he wasn't listening. He had hoped Susan hadn't picked up on it, but he should have known better. She was far too perceptive. "Listen to me," Justin said, gently tilting her chin up to meet his gaze. "You belong wherever you want to belong, and if anyone has a problem with that, they'll have to deal with me. We're in this together, remember?" Susan nodded, managing a small smile. "Together," she repeated. As the weeks passed, Justin found himself constantly amazed by Susan's resilience. Despite the challenges, she threw herself into learning about his world. She took etiquette classes, started volunteering at some of the charities his company supported, and even signed up for a course on business basics at the local community college. But it was in the quiet moments at home that Justin truly saw the change in himself. He found himself looking forward to family dinners, where they would talk about Chloe's day at her new school, or Susan's progress in her online social work classes. The late nights at the office became fewer and further between, replaced by bedtime stories with Chloe and long conversations with Susan on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below them. One Saturday morning, Justin woke up to an empty bed. Curious, he padded out to the living room, where he found Susan and Chloe huddled on the couch, giggling over a bowl of cereal as they watched cartoons in their pajamas. The sight stopped him in his tracks. This simple domestic scene was so far removed from his old life of wild parties and corporate power plays, yet it filled him with a warmth he had never known before. "Daddy Justin!" Chloe called out, spotting him. "Come watch with us. Mommy says it's okay to have cereal on the couch just this once." Susan looked up, a mix of love and mischief in her eyes. "Care to join us, Mr. CEO? I promise the stock market won't crash if you watch some SpongeBob." Laughing, Justin joined them on the couch, pulling them both close. As Chloe's giggles filled the air and Susan's head rested on his shoulder, Justin realized that he had never felt more content. But even as their family life flourished, the outside world continued to present challenges. Justin's friends, while polite to Susan's face, continued to question his choices behind his back. "I just don't get it, man," Caleb said one day over lunch. "You could have anyone. Why settle for a waitress with a kid?" Justin felt his temper flare. "I'm not settling for anything. Susan and Chloe are the best things that ever happened to me, and I'd appreciate it if you'd show them some respect." Caleb held up his hands in surrender. "Whoa, easy there. I'm just looking out for you. You've changed, Justin. The old you would never have missed out on that merger last week for a kid's dance recital." Justin stood up, tossing his napkin on the table. "Maybe the old me needed to change," he said coldly before walking out of the restaurant. As he drove home, Justin's mind was in turmoil. Had he changed? Absolutely. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he was changing for the better. Susan and Chloe had shown him a kind of love and fulfillment he never knew existed. How could his friends not see that? But even as Justin grappled with these external pressures, a much bigger challenge was looming on the horizon, one that would test their relationship to its very core. It started innocently enough. Justin was going through some old files, preparing for a retrospective presentation on Nexus Technologies' growth over the past decade. As he scrolled through financial reports and strategic decisions, one particular move caught his eye: the closure of a manufacturing plant in Ohio 5 years ago. At the time, it had seemed like a straightforward business decision. The plant was underperforming, and shutting it down had significantly boosted the company's profit margins. It had been one of Justin's first major decisions as CEO, and it had earned him accolades from the board and shareholders alike. But now, as he read through the details, something nagged at him. The plant had been located in a small town in Ohio, the same state Susan had grown up in, With a growing sense of unease, Justin dug deeper. He pulled up employee records, news articles from the time, and then he saw it, a name that made his blood run cold. Susan Hughes. No, it couldn't be. It had to be a coincidence. But as Justin read on, the terrible truth became undeniable. Susan had worked at that plant. She had been one of the hundreds of employees who had lost their jobs when he had decided to shut it down. The implications hit Justin like a physical blow. This decision, his decision, had been the reason Susan had struggled so much as a single mother. It was why she'd ended up working at McDonald's, barely making ends meet. The hardships she had faced, the challenges she had overcome, they could all be traced back to him. For days, Justin wrestled with this knowledge. He threw himself into work, staying late at the office, avoiding Susan's concerned gaze when he came home. How could he tell her? How could he admit that he was the reason for so much of her past pain? But the secret ate at him. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time he looked at Susan or Chloe, he felt a crushing guilt. They deserved to know the truth, no matter the consequences. Finally, about a week after his discovery, Justin knew he couldn't keep it in any longer. He asked Susan to meet him on their balcony after Chloe had gone to bed. As they stood there, the city spread out before them. Justin felt like he might be sick. Susan must have sensed his tension because she turned to him, her eyes filled with concern. "Justin, what's wrong? You've been acting strange all week. Are you having second thoughts about us?" Her vulnerability, her fear of losing what they had built, made Justin's heart ache. "No, God, no," he said quickly, taking her hands in his. "Susan, I love you more than I ever thought possible. You and Chloe, you're my whole world." "Then what is it?" Susan pressed, relief mingling with confusion in her eyes. Justin took a deep breath. This was it. No turning back now. "Susan, I found out something. Something about my past, about a decision I made, and it affected you. Before we even met." Susan's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Justin closed his eyes, steeling himself. 5 years ago, I made the decision to close down a manufacturing plant in Ohio. It was one of my first big moves as CEO. At the time, all I cared about was the bottom line. I didn't think about the people it would affect. He opened his eyes, forcing himself to meet Susan's gaze. "Susan, you worked at that plant. You lost your job because of me." The silence that followed was deafening. Susan's face went through a range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and then slowly, a dawning realization. "The closure," she whispered. "That was you." Justin nodded, feeling lower than he ever had in his life. "I'm so sorry, Susan. I had no idea. If I had known..." Susan pulled her hands away, taking a step back. "If you had known what? That one of the nameless employees you were laying off would end up being your wife? Would that have changed anything?" The bitterness in her voice cut through Justin like a knife. I don't know," he admitted. "Back then, probably not. But Susan, you have to believe me, I'm not that person anymore. You've changed me." Susan laughed, but it was a harsh, humorless sound. "Changed you? Justin, do you have any idea what that closure did to me? To Chloe? We lost everything. I had to drop out of college, move in with my parents. I worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads." The pain in her eyes was unbearable. Justin reached out to her, but she flinched away. "Don't," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't. I need to think. I need to be alone." With that, she turned and walked back into the apartment, leaving Justin alone on the balcony. As he watched her go, Justin felt as if his whole world was crumbling around him. He had thought the hardest part would be telling her the truth. Now he realized that the real challenge was just beginning. As the door closed behind Susan, Justin sank to the ground, his back against the glass barrier. The city lights blurred through his tears as the full weight of his past actions crashed down upon him. He had won Susan's heart, built a life with her and Chloe, only to have it all threatened by a ghost from his past, a ghost of his own making. The night stretched on, cold and unforgiving, as Justin grappled with the consequences of his confession. The man he used to be and the man he had become collided in a storm of regret and fear. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Justin made a silent vow. No matter what it took, he would make this right. He had to, because a life without Susan and Chloe was no life at all. The days following Justin's confession were filled with a tense silence that seemed to permeate every corner of their once happy home. Susan moved through the apartment like a ghost, her eyes distant and her responses to Justin's attempts at conversation monosyllabic at best. She threw herself into caring for Chloe, using her daughter's needs as a shield against the turmoil raging inside her. Justin watched helplessly as the woman he loved retreated further into herself. He wanted desperately to bridge the chasm that had opened between them, but every time he tried to approach Susan, the pain and betrayal in her eyes stopped him cold. One evening, about a week after his confession, Justin found Susan sitting on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. He hesitated in the doorway, his heart aching at the sight of her looking so lost and alone. "Susan," he said softly, not wanting to startle her, "can we talk?" She didn't turn to look at him, but she nodded slightly. Taking this as a good sign, Justin sat down in the chair next to her, careful to maintain some distance. "I know saying I'm sorry isn't enough," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "What I did, it was unforgivable. I was a different person then, focused only on profits and power. But Susan, you have to believe me when I say that meeting you, falling in love with you and Chloe, it's changed me in ways I never thought possible." Susan finally turned to look at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "That's just it, Justin. How can I believe that? How do I know that the man I fell in love with is real and not just another calculated move to get what you want?" Her words hit Justin like a physical blow. "Susan, no. What we have, it's real. It's the most real thing I've ever experienced in my life." "But how can I trust that?" Susan asked, her voice breaking. "You made a decision that destroyed my life, the lives of hundreds of others, without a second thought. And now you say you've changed. But how do I know that the next time a big decision comes along you won't revert back to that person who only cared about the bottom line?" Justin leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "Because I'm not that person anymore. You and Chloe, you've shown me what really matters in life. I would give up everything, my company, my wealth, all of it, if it meant keeping you in my life." Susan stood up abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself as if warding off a chill. "I need time, Justin. I need to think, to process all of this. I don't know if I can get past this." With that, she walked back into the apartment, leaving Justin alone with his thoughts and the weight of his past actions. Over the next few weeks, Justin threw himself into proving to Susan that he had truly changed. He started by reaching out to the former employees of the Ohio plant, setting up a fund to help those who were still struggling financially. He worked with local community leaders to bring new job opportunities to the area, investing his own money to kickstart small businesses. At home, he took on more responsibilities with Chloe, giving Susan space, while also showing her that he was committed to their family. He cooked dinners, helped with homework, and even learned to braid Chloe's hair for school, a task that had always frustrated Susan. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Susan began to thaw. Justin would catch her watching him with Chloe, a soft expression on her face that gave him hope. She started joining them for family movie nights again, and while things were far from perfect, Justin felt like they were making progress. But just as things seemed to be improving, a new crisis emerged that threatened to destroy everything they had built. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when the doorbell rang. Justin answered it to find Caleb standing there, an uncharacteristically serious expression on his face. "We need to talk," Caleb said, brushing past Justin into the apartment. Justin felt a sense of unease settle in his stomach. "What's going on, Caleb?" Caleb paced the living room, running a hand through his hair. "Look, man, I can't do this anymore. The guilt is eating me alive." "What are you talking about?" Justin asked, his confusion growing. Caleb stopped pacing and looked Justin in the eye. "The bet, Justin. The bet we made about Susan." Justin felt the blood drain from his face. In all the chaos of the past few weeks, he had completely forgotten about the initial reason he had approached Susan. The bet that had started it all seemed like a lifetime ago. "Caleb, that bet was over a long time ago. I fell in love with Susan, for real. It has nothing to do with—" I know, Caleb interrupted. "But don't you see? This whole relationship, it started because of a stupid, drunken bet. And now I see how much you've changed, how much you love her. I can't keep this secret anymore. She deserves to know the truth." Before Justin could respond, he heard a sharp intake of breath behind him. He turned to see Susan standing in the doorway, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock. "What bet?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. Justin felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. He took a step towards Susan, but she held up a hand to stop him. "Susan, please, let me explain," Justin pleaded. But Susan wasn't listening. Her eyes darted between Justin and Caleb, realization and hurt dawning on her face. "This whole thing, our entire relationship, it was all because of a bet." Caleb, looking thoroughly miserable, nodded. "I'm so sorry, Susan, we were drunk and stupid and—" "Get out," Susan said, her voice cold and hard. "Both of you, get out now." "Susan, please," Justin begged, reaching for her hand. "So yes, it started because of a bet, but what we have now is real. I love you, I love Chloe, you have to believe me." Susan jerked her hand away, as if his touch burned her. "I don't have to believe anything you say. You've been lying to me from the very beginning. First the plant closure and now this. How can I ever trust anything you say again?" With that, she turned and ran to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Justin moved to follow her, but Caleb grabbed his arm. "Give her some space, man," Caleb said softly. "I think we've done enough damage for one day." As Caleb left, Justin sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. How had everything gone so wrong? He had thought the revelation about the plant closure was the worst thing he would have to face, but this felt like the final nail in the coffin of his relationship with Susan. The next few days passed in a blur of arguments, tears, and long, painful silences. Susan packed up her and Chloe's belongings, deaf to Justin's pleas and explanations. "I can't do this anymore, Justin," Susan said, as she zipped up the last suitcase. "I don't know who you are anymore. I don't know if I ever really knew you at all." "Susan, please," Justin begged, his voice hoarse from hours of pleading. "I know I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but my love for you and Chloe, that's real. It's the most real thing in my life." Susan paused at the door, Chloe's small hand in hers. For a moment, Justin thought he saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but then she squared her shoulders and met his gaze. "Goodbye, Justin," she said softly, before walking out of the apartment and out of his life. As the door closed behind them, Justin felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. He stumbled to the balcony, gasping for breath, his mind reeling from the sudden, devastating loss. The city sprawled out before him, just as it had on that first night when he had brought Susan home. But now, instead of possibility and excitement, all Justin felt was an overwhelming sense of emptiness. For days, Justin wandered the apartment like a ghost, unable to eat or sleep. He went through the motions at work, but his mind was elsewhere, constantly replaying every moment with Susan, wondering where it had all gone wrong. It was during one of these sleepless nights, as Justin sat in Chloe's empty room clutching one of her stuffed animals, that he had an epiphany. He had spent his entire adult life chasing success, defining himself by his wealth and status. But none of that mattered now. The only thing that mattered was the family he had lost. With a sudden, fierce determination, Justin knew what he had to do. It wouldn't be easy, and it might not even work, but he had to try. He owed it to Susan, to Chloe, and to himself to become the man they deserved. The next morning, Justin called an emergency board meeting. As he stood before the shocked faces of his executives and investors, he took a deep breath. "I'm selling the company," he announced, his voice steady and resolute. The room erupted in chaos. Board members shouted questions and objections, but Justin held up a hand for silence. "I've made my decision," he continued. "I'll oversee the transition to ensure all employees are taken care of. But after that, I'm stepping down as CEO and selling my shares." "But why?" one of the board members sputtered. "We're more profitable than ever." Justin smiled sadly. "Because I've learned that there are more important things in life than profit margins and stock prices. I've lost sight of what really matters, and in the process, I've hurt people I care about deeply. It's time for me to make amends and start over." The process of selling the company and stepping down as CEO took several grueling months. Justin worked tirelessly to ensure that every employee would be taken care of in the transition, setting up generous severance packages and job placement services. He also continued his efforts to make amends for the Ohio plant closure, expanding his initiatives to help the affected community. He set up a foundation dedicated to providing education and job training to displaced workers, funding it with a significant portion of his personal wealth. As the sale of the company neared completion, Justin found himself standing once again on the balcony of his penthouse apartment. But this time, instead of feeling on top of the world, he felt humbled and introspective. He thought about Susan and Chloe, wondering where they were, how they were doing. He hadn't tried to contact them since they left, respecting Susan's need for space. But now, as he stood on the precipice of his new life, he knew it was time to reach out. With trembling hands, Justin picked up his phone and dialed Susan's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Just as he was about to give up hope, he heard a click and then Susan's cautious voice. "Hello? Susan?" Justin breathed, relief washing over him at the sound of her voice. "It's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but please just give me a chance to explain." There was a long pause, and Justin feared she might hang up. But then he heard a soft sigh. "Okay, Justin. I'm listening." Justin closed his eyes, gathering his thoughts. "I've sold the company," he said simply. "I'm walking away from all of it. The money, the power, everything. I realize that none of it means anything without you and Chloe." He heard Susan's sharp intake of breath but pressed on before she could interrupt. "I know I hurt you, and I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I want to show you that I've changed, that I'm trying to be a better man, the man you and Chloe deserve." "Justin." Susan's voice was a mix of emotions he couldn't quite decipher. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," Justin said quickly. I was hoping we could meet, talk face to face. I want to show you everything I've been doing, how I'm trying to make amends for my past mistakes." There was another long pause, and Justin held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, Susan spoke. "Okay," she said softly, "we can meet. But Justin, I can't promise anything. I need you to understand that." "I understand," Justin said, hope blooming in his chest, despite her cautious words. "Thank you, Susan. Thank you for giving me a chance." As he ended the call, Justin looked out over the city once more. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. It felt like a sign, a new beginning. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. Rebuilding trust, proving that he had truly changed. It wouldn't happen overnight. But for the first time in months, Justin felt a glimmer of hope. As he turned away from the view, ready to begin the next chapter of his life, Justin made a silent vow. No matter what it took, he would become the man Susan and Chloe deserved, not for the sake of winning them back, but because it was the right thing to do, because they had shown him what truly mattered in life, and he would spend the rest of his days trying to live up to that lesson. The future was uncertain, but Justin was ready to face it. With humility, determination, and a newfound understanding of what really mattered, he stepped into the unknown, hoping that somewhere down this new path, he might find his way back to the family he loved. The autumn breeze rustled through the leaves of Central Park as Justin Harrison walked along a winding path, hands tucked into the pockets of a worn leather jacket. Gone were the tailored suits and designer shoes that had once defined his wardrobe. Now, in jeans and comfortable boots, he looked like any other New Yorker enjoying a crisp fall day. But Justin wasn't just taking a leisurely stroll. He was on his way to meet Susan and Chloe at the playground, a meeting that filled him with equal parts excitement and trepidation. It had been 3 months since he'd sold Nexus Technologies and stepped down as CEO, 3 months of rebuilding his life from the ground up. As he approached the playground, he spotted them immediately. Chloe was on the swings, her laughter carrying across the park as Susan pushed her higher and higher. The sight made Justin's heart constrict with longing and regret. Susan looked up as he neared, her expression guarded but not unwelcoming. "Justin," she said with a nod. "Hi, Susan," he replied, then turned to Chloe with a warm smile. "Hey there, princess. Look how high you're swinging." Chloe's eyes lit up. "Daddy, Justin, watch me jump!" Before either adult could protest, Chloe launched herself off the swing at its apex. Justin's heart leaped into his throat as he instinctively lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the ground. "Chloe!" Susan exclaimed, rushing over. "What were you thinking? You could have been hurt." But Chloe just giggled, wrapping her arms around Justin's neck. "I knew Daddy Justin would catch me. He always does." The simple trust in her words brought tears to Justin's eyes. He hugged Chloe tightly before setting her down, meeting Susan's worried gaze over their daughter's head. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I should have been more careful." Susan's expression softened slightly. "It's okay, she's always been a daredevil." She paused, then added, "You look different." Justin ran a hand through his hair, which was longer now and slightly unkempt. Yeah, I guess I do. A lot has changed. As Chloe ran off to play on the jungle gym, Justin and Susan sat on a nearby bench. For a moment, they watched their daughter in silence, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Finally, Susan spoke. So, tell me about these changes. Last time we talked, you said you sold the company. Justin nodded, his eyes still on Chloe. I did. Walked away from all of it. The money, the power, the lifestyle. None of it meant anything without you and Chloe. He turned to face Susan, his eyes sincere. I know I hurt you, Susan. What I did with the plant closure, the bet. I can never fully make up for that. But I'm trying. I've been working with the communities affected by Nexus's decisions, trying to bring back jobs and opportunity. Susan's eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? How? Justin leaned forward, his passion evident as he began to explain. I started a foundation with most of the money from selling my shares. We're focusing on job training, small business loans, and education initiatives in areas hit hard by corporate downsizing and plant closures. He pulled out his phone, showing Susan photos of a recently opened community center in Ohio. This used to be the old plant. We've converted it into a multi-use space with classrooms for adult education, a daycare center for working parents, and incubator spaces for local entrepreneurs. As Justin scrolled through the images, Susan's expression changed from skepticism to genuine interest. That's actually impressive, Justin. But why? Why go to all this trouble? Justin pocketed his phone, his gaze intense. Because I needed to be better. For myself, for the people I hurt, and for you and Chloe. You showed me what really matters in life, Susan. I couldn't go back to being that person who only cared about profits and power. Susan was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. Then she asked, and what about you? What are you doing now that you're not running a multi-billion-dollar company? A small smile tugged at Justin's lips. Would you believe I'm teaching? Susan's eyes widened. Teaching? You? Justin chuckled. I know, it surprised me too. I'm guest lecturing at NYU's Stern School of Business. But instead of teaching how to maximize profits, I'm focusing on ethical business practices and corporate social responsibility. He leaned back, his eyes distant. It's humbling. These students, they're so idealistic, so eager to change the world. They remind me of who I used to be before I lost my way. I'm hoping that by sharing my experiences, the good and the bad, I can help guide them towards being better leaders than I was. As Justin spoke, Susan found herself studying him closely. The arrogant, polished CEO she had first met was gone. In his place was a man who seemed more grounded, more human. His eyes, once cold and calculating, now held a warmth and sincerity that tugged at her heart. You really have changed, haven't you? She said softly, almost to herself. Justin met her gaze, his expression vulnerable. I'm trying, Susan. Every day. I know I can never undo the hurt I caused, but I want to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. Not just to you and Chloe, but to everyone my actions affected. Before Susan could respond, Chloe came running up, her cheeks flushed with exertion. Mommy, Daddy, Justin, can we get ice cream? Please. Justin looked to Susan, deferring to her judgment. Susan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sure, sweetie, there's a cart just down the path. As they walked to the ice cream cart, Chloe between them holding both their hands, Justin felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from his life for too long. This, he realized, was what he had been searching for all along. Not the trappings of wealth and power, but the simple joy of being with the people he loved. Over the next few weeks, Justin, Susan, and Chloe fell into a routine of regular meetups. They would spend afternoons in the park, visit museums, or simply hang out at Susan's modest apartment. With each meeting, the tension between Justin and Susan eased a little more. One Saturday, as they were leaving the Natural History Museum, Chloe tugged on Justin's hand. Daddy, Justin, can you come over for dinner tonight? Mommy makes the best spaghetti. Justin looked to Susan, not wanting to overstep. To his surprise, she smiled and nodded. You're welcome to join us if you'd like, Justin. It's nothing fancy, but I'd love to, Justin said quickly, his heart lightening at the invitation. That evening, as Justin sat at Susan's small kitchen table, watching her and Chloe move around the kitchen with practiced ease, he felt a pang of longing for what he had lost. But mixed with that longing was a sense of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he could earn back his place in this family. After dinner, as Chloe was engrossed in a cartoon, Susan and Justin stood side by side at the sink washing dishes. The domesticity of the moment wasn't lost on either of them. "This is nice," Susan said softly, handing Justin a plate to dry. Justin nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "It is." "Susan, He trailed off, unsure how to express the depth of his feelings. Susan turned to face him, her eyes searching his face. "Justin, I won't lie. What you did, it hurt me deeply. The plant closure, the bet. For a long time I thought I could never trust you again." Justin's heart sank, but Susan wasn't finished. "But these past few weeks, seeing how you've changed, how you are with Chloe, I'm starting to believe that the man I fell in love with is real after all." Hope bloomed in Justin's chest. "Susan, She held up a hand, stopping him. "I'm not saying everything is magically fixed. We still have a lot to work through, but I'm willing to try if you are." Justin set down the dish towel, taking Susan's hands in his. "Susan, trying to be worthy of you and Chloe is all I want. I love you both so much, and I promise I will spend every day proving that to you." As they stood there in the small kitchen, the sounds of Chloe's cartoon floating in from the living room, Justin felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. Over the next few months, Justin threw himself into rebuilding his relationship with Susan and Chloe. He was there for school pickups and ballet recitals, for skinned knees and bedtime stories. He and Susan went on dates, real dates, not the lavish outings of their past, but simple evenings of conversation and laughter. Justin also continued his work with the foundation, and Susan began to take an interest in his efforts. She started accompanying him on visits to community centers and job training programs, offering her perspective as someone who had been on the receiving end of corporate downsizing. One evening, after a particularly impactful visit to a women's shelter that the foundation was supporting, Susan turned to Justin with tears in her eyes. "You really are making a difference, aren't you?" Justin squeezed her hand. "I'm trying, but I couldn't do any of this without you, Susan. Your strength, your compassion, you inspire me every day to be better." As winter turned to spring, Justin felt the shift in their relationship. The wariness in Susan's eyes had been replaced by warmth, and Chloe had fully embraced him as her father. They were becoming a family again, stronger and more united than ever before. It was on a warm May evening, as they walked through Central Park after a family picnic, that Justin knew it was time. Chloe ran ahead, chasing a butterfly while Justin and Susan strolled hand in hand. "Susan," Justin said, coming to a stop beneath a blooming cherry tree, "there's something I need to ask you." Susan looked at him curiously as he took both her hands in his. "What is it, Justin?" Justin took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "Susan, when I first asked you to marry me, it was for all the wrong reasons. I didn't truly understand love or commitment or what it meant to be a family." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Susan gasped, her free hand flying to her mouth. "But now," Justin continued, his voice thick with emotion, "I know what real love is. It's the way my heart skips a beat when you smile. It's the pride I feel watching you chase your dreams. It's the joy of being a father to Chloe, and the peace I feel when I'm with both of you." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Susan Hughes, I love you with every fiber of my being. You've made me a better man, a better father, a better human being. Will you marry me? For real this time? No bets, no hidden agendas. Just us, building a life together." Tears streamed down Susan's face as she looked from the ring to Justin's earnest expression. For a moment that felt like an eternity. She was silent. Then, slowly, a radiant smile spread across her face. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes, Justin, I'll marry you." As Justin slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to embrace her, they heard a squeal of delight. Chloe came running towards them, launching herself into their arms. "Are we going to be a real family now?" she asked, her eyes shining with hope. Susan and Justin exchanged a loving look over Chloe's head. "We already are, sweetheart," Susan said, hugging her daughter close. "We already are." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms under the cherry blossoms, Justin marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a callous CEO driven by greed and ambition to a man humbled by love and driven by a desire to make the world better. It had been a long and difficult road, but looking at Susan and Chloe, Justin knew that every struggle, every moment of doubt and pain had been worth it. This was what true success looked like. Not a corner office or a hefty bank account, but the love of a family and the knowledge that you were making a positive difference in the world. As they walked out of the park, hand in hand with Chloe skipping ahead, Justin and Susan began to talk excitedly about their future. They discussed ideas for the wedding, a small, intimate affair that reflected their new values. They talked about combining their living spaces, with Justin suggesting they find a new place together, somewhere that could be a fresh start for all of them. "I was thinking," Susan said, a hint of nervousness in her voice, "maybe I could get more involved with the foundation. My social work degree is almost finished, and I'd love to put it to use helping others who've been in my position." Justin's face lit up. "Susan, that would be amazing. Your perspective would be invaluable. We could work together, make an even bigger impact." As they continued to plan and dream, Justin felt a sense of excitement he'd never experienced in his old life. This was what it meant to have a true partner, to build something meaningful together. That night, after tucking Chloe into bed with promises of ice cream and wedding planning the next day, Justin and Susan stood on the balcony of his apartment, soon to be their apartment. The city sprawled before them, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. "You know," Susan said, leaning into Justin's embrace, "when you first brought me here, I felt so out of place, like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life." Justin tightened his arms around her. "And now?" Susan turned in his arms, meeting his gaze with a smile. "Now it feels like home, because home isn't a place, it's the people you love." As they sealed their new engagement with a kiss, the New York skyline twinkling behind them, Justin knew that his greatest success story wasn't the one written in business journals or measured in stock prices. It was this: the love of a good woman, the trust of a child, and the chance to make the world a little bit better each day. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead. But with Susan and Chloe by his side, Justin was ready to face whatever life had in store, because he had finally learned the most important lesson of all, that true wealth isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the love we give and the lives we touch. As they turned to go inside hand in hand, Justin took one last look at the city below. Once, he had seen it as a playground for the powerful, a place to conquer and dominate. Now he saw it as a community to nurture, full of people with hopes and dreams just like his own. With a contented sigh, he closed the balcony door behind them, leaving behind the ghosts of his past and stepping into a future bright with promise. The story of Justin Harrison, the ruthless CEO, had ended, but the story of Justin, Susan, and Chloe, a family built on love, trust, and the desire to make a difference, was just beginning. And as they fell asleep that night, wrapped in each other's arms, both Justin and Susan knew that this was just the start of their greatest adventure yet. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, their love stronger for having been tested, and their bond unbreakable. The future stretched out before them, a canvas waiting to be painted with the colors of their shared dreams and aspirations. And though the path might not always be smooth, they were ready to walk it together hand in hand, with Chloe skipping happily between them. For in the end, they had discovered the most profound truth of all, that love, when it's real and true, has the power to heal, to transform, and to create a happily ever after that's more beautiful than any fairy tale. And that was a story worth living, every single day. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains of the modest brownstone in Brooklyn, casting a warm glow over the bedroom. Justin stirred, his arm instinctively tightening around Susan's sleeping form. For a moment, he simply lay there, marveling at how much his life had changed in the past year. Gone were the days of waking up alone in a cold, impersonal penthouse, his mind immediately racing with stock prices and merger plans. Now his first thoughts were of the woman beside him and the little girl sleeping down the hall. As if on cue, the pitter-patter of small feet echoed through the house. "Daddy! Mommy! Wake up!" Chloe's excited voice preceded her as she burst into the room, launching herself onto the bed. Justin laughed, scooping her up into a bear hug. "Good morning, princess. What's got you so excited today?" "It's pancake day," Chloe exclaimed, bouncing on the bed. "You promised we'd make funny shapes." Susan groaned good-naturedly, her eyes still closed. "Is it Sunday already?" Justin pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Sure is. Come on, sleepyhead. We've got some pancake art to create." As they made their way to the kitchen, Justin couldn't help but reflect on how different this home felt, compared to his old apartment. Where the penthouse had been all sleek lines and minimalist decor, this place was warm and lived in. Chloe's artwork adorned the fridge, family photos lined the walls, and the air always seemed to smell of home-cooked meals and love. While Justin mixed the pancake batter, Susan started the coffee maker, and Chloe set the table, insisting on using the fancy plates for their Sunday breakfast tradition. It was a dance they had perfected over the months, each person knowing their role and moving in harmony with the others. "Okay, Chloe," Justin said, pouring batter onto the griddle. "What shape should we try first?" "A unicorn," Chloe declared without hesitation. Justin raised an eyebrow at Susan, who stifled a laugh. "A unicorn, huh? Well, I'll do my best, but no promises on how recognizable it'll be." As they worked on their pancake creations, which ranged from somewhat recognizable animals to abstract blobs that Chloe insisted were modern art, Justin felt a wave of contentment wash over him. This, he realized, was what he had been searching for all along. Not the accolades of the business world or the trappings of wealth, but the simple joy of a Sunday morning with his family. After breakfast, as Susan and Chloe curled up on the couch with a book, Justin's phone buzzed with a message from the foundation. There was an issue with one of their job training programs that needed his attention. For a moment, he felt the old pull of work, the instinct to drop everything and rush to fix the problem. But then he looked at his family, saw the peace on their faces as they shared a story and made a decision. "Hey," he said softly, joining them on the couch. "Mind if I listen in for a bit? Then I've got to make a few calls for work." Susan smiled, making room for him. "Of course. Everything okay?" Justin nodded, wrapping an arm around them both. "Nothing that can't wait an hour. This is more important." It wasn't always easy, balancing his work with the foundation and his commitment to his family. There were late nights poring over budgets and grant proposals, weekends spent visiting community centers and meeting with local leaders. But unlike his days as CEO, Justin no longer let work consume him. He was there for Chloe's school plays and parent-teacher conferences. He and Susan had a standing date night every week, even if it was just takeout and a movie after Chloe went to bed. And every decision he made, whether for the foundation or his family, was guided by the lessons he had learned about what truly mattered in life. Of course, their journey wasn't without its challenges. There were arguments about money, Justin wanting to provide more, Susan insisting on maintaining their modest lifestyle. There were moments of doubt when the ghosts of past mistakes would resurface, requiring patience and understanding from both of them. One particularly difficult moment came when Justin ran into an old business associate while out with Susan and Chloe. The man had made a snide comment about Justin slumming it with his new family, and Justin had felt the old anger and pride rise up within him. But before he could react, he felt Susan's hand slip into his, grounding him. He looked down at Chloe, who was watching the interaction with curious eyes, and took a deep breath. "Actually," Justin had said calmly, "I've never been happier or more successful than I am right now. Have a good day." As they walked away, Susan had squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. That night, after Chloe was asleep, Justin and Susan had a long talk about the incident. They discussed the lingering insecurities and the occasional longing for the old lifestyle that Justin sometimes felt. But they also reaffirmed their commitment to the life they were building together and the values they wanted to instill in Chloe. "You know," Susan had said, curled up against Justin on their small balcony, "when I first met you, I never would have believed you'd become the man you are now. But watching you with Chloe today, seeing how you've grown, I fall in love with you more every day." Justin had pulled her close, overwhelmed by emotion. "You and Chloe, you saved me. You showed me what real success looks like. I wouldn't trade this life for all the money in the world." As the months passed, their bond grew stronger. They faced each challenge together, from Chloe's first bout of school bullying to the foundation's struggles with a difficult community project. Through it all, they remained a united front, their love deepening with each obstacle overcome. Finally, almost exactly a year after Justin's heartfelt proposal in Central Park, the day of their wedding arrived. They had chosen to hold the ceremony in the community center they had built together in Ohio, a symbol of their journey and their commitment to making a difference. The center's main hall had been transformed with simple, elegant decorations. Wildflowers picked by Chloe adorned every surface, and soft fairy lights twinkled overhead. It was a far cry from the lavish affair Justin might have once envisioned, but to him it was perfect. As Justin stood at the front of the room, waiting for Susan to appear, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. His eyes roamed over the small gathering of guests, a mix of Susan's family, some of Justin's former employees who had become friends, and members of the communities they had helped through the foundation. The music started, and Justin's breath caught in his throat as Susan appeared at the end of the aisle. She was a vision in a simple white dress, her hair adorned with a crown of wildflowers. But it was the radiant smile on her face that truly took Justin's breath away. Chloe preceded her mother down the aisle, tossing flower petals with gleeful abandon. When she reached Justin, she gave him a fierce hug before taking her place beside him. As Susan reached them, Justin felt tears prick his eyes. This moment, this woman, this life, it was more than he had ever dreamed possible. The ceremony was short but deeply meaningful. They had written their own vows, each promising not just love and fidelity, but a commitment to growing together, to facing life's challenges as a team, and to always striving to make the world a little bit better. "Susan," Justin said, his voice thick with emotion, "you saw the best in me when I couldn't see it myself. You challenged me to be better, to do better. With you and Chloe, I found a purpose and a joy I never knew existed. I promise to spend every day trying to be the man you deserve, to be a father Chloe can be proud of, and to never forget the incredible gift you've given me in loving me." Susan's eyes shimmered with tears as she spoke her vows. "Justin, our journey hasn't been easy or conventional, but it's ours. You've shown me that people can change, that love can heal, and that the best adventures are the ones we never saw coming. I promise to stand by you, to support your dreams as you've supported mine, and to face whatever life throws our way together. You and Chloe are my heart, my home, and my happily ever after." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, the small gathering erupted in cheers and applause. Chloe hugged them both, completing the family circle. The reception that followed was a joyous affair, filled with laughter, heartfelt toasts, and impromptu dancing. Justin and Susan moved among their guests, thanking them for being part of their special day and listening to stories of how the foundation had impacted lives. As the evening wound down, Justin and Susan shared a quiet moment on the center's back porch, overlooking the town they had helped revitalize. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Susan asked, leaning into Justin's embrace. Justin shook his head, a smile playing on his lips. "Sometimes I still think I'm going to wake up and find this has all been a dream, but then I look at you and Chloe, and I know this is real. This is everything." Susan turned in his arms, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Well, Mr. Harrison, I hope you're ready for our next big adventure." Justin raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And what might that be, Mrs. Harrison?" Susan took his hand, placing it gently on her stomach. "We're going to need to make some room in that brownstone of ours. Say in about 7 months?" For a moment Justin stood frozen, his mind processing her words. Then, with a whoop of joy, he lifted Susan off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed. "We're having a baby?" he asked, setting her down gently, his hands cradling her face. Susan nodded, happy tears spilling down her cheeks. "We're having a baby. I found out last week, but I wanted to wait until today to tell you. Sort of a wedding gift." Justin kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and joy into the embrace. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for believing in me, for giving me a second chance, for this incredible life we're building together." As they rejoined the party hand in hand, both Justin and Susan marveled at the journey that had brought them to this point. From a cynical bet made in a moment of arrogance to a love that had transformed them both, their story was a testament to the power of second chances and the incredible capacity of the human heart to change and grow. In the months that followed, as they prepared for the arrival of their new baby, Justin and Susan continued to face life's challenges together. They expanded the foundation's reach, with Susan taking a more active role in program development. They navigated the ups and downs of pregnancy, with Justin attending every doctor's appointment and indulging Susan's midnight cravings with good-natured patience. Chloe threw herself into the role of big sister-to-be with enthusiasm, helping to decorate the nursery and offering name suggestions that ranged from the traditional to the wildly creative. The family grew closer with each passing day, their bond strengthened by the shared excitement of welcoming a new member. As Susan's due date approached, Justin found himself reflecting on the incredible journey that had led them to this point. He thought about the man he used to be, driven by greed and ambition, measuring his worth in dollars and cents. He thought about the bet that had started it all, a callous game that had unexpectedly led him to the greatest love of his life. But mostly, he thought about the future, about the family he and Susan were building, the lives they were touching through their work with the foundation, and the legacy of love and compassion they hoped to leave behind. On a warm summer evening, as Justin sat on their small balcony with a sleeping Chloe in his lap and Susan beside him, her hand resting on her swollen belly, he felt a sense of completeness he had never known before. "You know," he said softly, careful not to wake Chloe, "I used to think I had it all figured out. Success, power, money. I thought that was the key to happiness, but I had it all wrong." Susan turned to him, a soft smile on her face. "Oh? And what's the real key to happiness, Mr. Harrison?" Justin looked at his wife, at their sleeping daughter, at the evidence of their growing family. "This," he said simply, "love, family, doing something that matters. It's not always easy, but it's real. It's everything." Susan leaned in, kissing him softly. "I couldn't agree more." As the sun set over Brooklyn, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Justin Harrison, once a cutthroat CEO, now a devoted husband, father, and philanthropist, knew that he had finally found his true purpose. Not in the boardrooms and penthouses of his past, but in the love of his family and the difference they were making in the world. The bet that had started their story was long forgotten, replaced by a love that had been tested, strengthened, and proven true. And as they sat there on the cusp of a new chapter in their lives, Justin and Susan knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with love, with courage, and with the unshakable bond of a family built on second chances and unconditional love. Their journey from a cynical bet to true love was more than just a personal transformation. It was a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of forgiveness, and the incredible capacity of the human heart to change and grow. In each other, they had found not just love, but a purpose greater than themselves, a chance to make the world a little bit better, one day at a time. As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Justin and Susan shared a look of pure contentment. Their story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But whatever the future held, they would face it together, their love a beacon of hope in a world that sometimes seemed too dark. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of family and the promise of a bright future, they knew that they had found something far more precious than any bet could ever win. They had found their happily ever after. 5 years had passed since that warm summer evening on the balcony. The Brooklyn brownstone, once new and unfamiliar, now resonated with the joyful chaos of family life. On this particular morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating a scene of domestic bliss tinged with the usual morning rush. Justin, his hair now flecked with distinguished grey, stood at the stove flipping pancakes while simultaneously reviewing notes for his upcoming lecture. At the table, Susan fed their youngest 2-year-old Ethan, while helping 8-year-old Chloe practice her spelling words. "Dad," Chloe called out, "how do you spell responsibility?" Justin turned, a warm smile spreading across his face. "That's a big word, sweetheart. Why don't we break it down together?" As he guided Chloe through the spelling, Justin caught Susan's eye. They shared a moment of silent communication, both marveling at how far they'd come and how much their lives had changed. The Harrison family had grown in more ways than one. After Ethan's birth, they had made the decision to become foster parents, opening their home and hearts to children in need. Currently, they were fostering a set of twins, Alex and Emma, who had quickly become an integral part of their family. "All right, troops," Susan announced, glancing at her watch. "Time to move out. Chloe, don't forget your science project. Alex, Emma, your permission slips for the field trip are in your backpacks." As the children gathered their things amidst a flurry of activity, Justin and Susan worked in tandem, packing lunches, tying shoelaces, and dispensing hugs and kisses. It was a practiced dance, one they had perfected over the years. Once the older children were safely on the school bus and Ethan was settled with his toys, Justin and Susan took a moment to breathe, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Ready for your big day?" Susan asked, straightening Justin's tie. Justin nodded, a mix of excitement and nervousness in his eyes. "As ready as I'll ever be. Are you sure you don't mind handling the foundation meeting alone?" Susan waved off his concern. "I've got it covered. This book launch is important, Justin. It's your chance to share our story, to really make a difference. The book Susan referred to was Justin's memoir, From Boardroom to Living Room, A Journey of Redemption. It chronicled his transformation from a cutthroat CEO to a devoted family man and philanthropist, detailing the bet that had changed everything and the love that had saved him. I just hope it resonates with people, Justin said, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. That maybe our story can inspire others to change, to see that it's never too late to choose a different path. Susan cupped his face in her hands, her eyes filled with pride and love. It will. Your story, our story, is powerful. It's about second chances, about the transformative power of love and forgiveness. That's something the world needs more of. As Justin headed out for his book launch, Susan turned her attention to the day's foundation work. The Harrison Family Foundation had grown significantly over the years, expanding its focus beyond job creation to include education initiatives, support for foster families, and programs aimed at teaching ethical business practices. Later that evening, the family gathered in the living room, eager to watch Justin's interview on a national news program. As the interviewer introduced him as former CEO turned philanthropist and author, Justin's voice filled the room. "My journey," he said, his tone sincere and humble, "is proof that change is possible, that the values we choose to live by are far more important than the wealth we accumulate. I was fortunate enough to learn that lesson before it was too late, thanks to the love and patience of my amazing wife and the unconditional love of our children." The camera panned to a photo of the Harrison family, all smiles at a recent foundation event. Susan felt tears prick her eyes as she listened to Justin continue. "Our foundation isn't just about creating jobs or providing education. It's about fostering compassion, about showing people that they have value beyond their economic output. It's about building a community where everyone has the chance to reach their full potential." As the interview continued, the children listened with rapt attention. Even young Ethan seemed to sense the importance of the moment, cuddling closer to Susan on the couch. "The bet that started it all," Justin was saying, "it seems so foolish now, but I'm grateful for it in a way, because it led me to Susan, to this family, to a life of purpose. It taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the love we share." After the interview ended and the younger children were in bed, Chloe lingered in the living room. "Dad," she said thoughtfully, "I'm really proud of you and Mom. When I grow up, I want to help people too." Justin and Susan exchanged a glance, their hearts swelling with pride and hope for the future. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Justin said, pulling Chloe into a hug. "And you know what? You already do help people every day just by being your kind and caring self." As Chloe headed off to bed, Susan curled up next to Justin on the couch. "Well, Mr. Harrison," she said, a teasing lilt in her voice, "how does it feel to be an inspiration?" Justin chuckled, wrapping an arm around her. "Honestly, it feels a bit surreal. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life, that I get to wake up every day next to you, that we have these amazing kids, that we're making a real difference in the world." Susan leaned into him, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "It's quite a journey we've been on, isn't it? From that first meeting at McDonald's to here, I never could have imagined this is where we'd end up." "Any regrets?" Justin asked, a hint of his old insecurity creeping into his voice. Susan sat up, meeting his gaze with unwavering love. "Not a single one. Every challenge, every obstacle we've faced, it's all led us here, and here is pretty wonderful." As they sat there reflecting on their journey, the sounds of their home surrounded them. Ethan's soft snores through the baby monitor, the twins whispering and giggling in their room, Chloe's gentle humming as she read herself to sleep. It was the symphony of a family, of a life built on love, second chances, and the courage to change. Justin and Susan's story was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more lives to touch, more love to give. But as they held each other close, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. As a family, as partners, as two people who had found in each other the strength to become the best versions of themselves. Their journey from a cynical bet to a life of purpose and love was more than just a personal transformation. It was a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of forgiveness, and the incredible capacity of the human heart to change and grow. In each other, they had found not just love but a calling greater than themselves, a chance to make the world a little bit better, one day at a time. As the city lights twinkled beyond their window, Justin and Susan Harrison looked to the future with hope and determination. Their story would continue to unfold, touching lives and inspiring change, and at the heart of it all would remain the love that had started with a bet and blossomed into a lifetime of purpose, compassion, and joy. Stories like this have the power to touch the heart and illuminate the mind. If you felt that, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapters of this emotional journey. There's always another story that can transform your day, and who knows, the next video might be exactly what you need. Click now and we'll see you there.